computer. I was just trying to think of how I wanted to record this. And then the other thing I will be doing is I will go ahead and share my screen and then basically just sort of lead us through this process. No, that's not the right screen. It did this to me before. Hold on just a second. I try to keep the clean screen as the recording. Let's see what we got here. This should be the right one here. It is not, but I'll do this. And there it is. Okay. All right, so I'll go back to the beginning. Not super organized, as you can tell. I am, but I'm not. I mean, definitely in this for like, woo, you know, when I start, it's like when I work the psychic fairs and I do all these fairs, all these readings one after another, it's like, oh my gosh, where's reality? Where's functionality? All righty. So welcome. This is what I call our Rise series. And basically I gave a talk. I don't remember what year it was. I'm thinking 2016, 2017, something like that, at one of the psychic fairs, possibly the Healing Arts Festival. I think it was the one that I'm going to be returning to this weekend. And it was about this, you know, what I saw as 12 key elements to really bring us back to, you know, what we've come here to do, what we've incarnated to do, to align with our soul purpose and be who we are here to be. And so in this webinar-ish, you know, it's live, it's going to be interactive. If you have any questions or anything, I'm offering this series because I really, again, wanted to kind of rebranch. I've been a metaphysician and, you know, for a lifetime, my whole life, I've been a metaphysician, but working in this field as an intuitive and spiritual teacher for 17 years. But when my husband passed away, kind of stepped back. So it's like, this felt like a really good thing to bring me back into teaching and to offer, because especially with all that is going on in our world, that it's really important for us to kind of come back to who we are, come back to reconnecting with our soul self and start moving toward that with, you know, consciousness and conviction. So in each month, I'm offering one key element. And it's on the fourth Monday of each month, except in December, it'll be the 3rd. And we will explore one key element. And in each of the classes, they can stand alone, absolutely. I will include insights about your inherent gifts and purpose, guidelines for coming back into alignment, and tools that you can implement. So I will be sharing information in the chat that will have links that you can use for resources. If you have missed the other classes, anytime you want to watch them, they've been uploaded. So the first 2 are already on my website, and that would be found at veronicalee.tv under the headline Learn, and then classes and events, and then, or whatever it says. And then you can find all of the classes, the recordings for each one, as well as the resources themselves, so that you will get to see what I shared. If you are calling in, some people are calling in with these Zooms versus having it on a video. You can join by raising your hand by *9, hitting *9 if you don't have access to the video controls. And you can also mute or unmute yourself by pushing *6. And again, I will be putting the resources in the chat, so you'll want to check that. So I'm Veronica Lee. So as I said, I have a metaphysical upbringing, basically in the 70s. Early 70s, I was probably about 4 or 5. My mom met a metaphysician. She was what we later deemed our family psychic, and she got very interested in all things metaphysical. So I learned from a really young age how to meditate, holding my hands over people. At the time, it wasn't called Reiki, it was just called energy work. And visualization. I wasn't really, I jokingly say I wasn't allowed to be sick. I was allowed to be sick, but I had to visualize myself getting well, that my mom would guide me through and see whatever sickness was in me and go through and, move it out. So I'm also in many ways a natural intuitive. So not only was it part of my upbringing where I learned from a very early age that everyone is psychic, I came in highly awake. And that's probably why I chose my particular mom, so I can kind of get a jump start on this life. Again, I'm a spiritual teacher, I'm an intuitive, and I've been mentoring people for over 15 years. I have been speaking, writing, and clients, all over the world. And specifically, I've been writing for Om Times. I do have information on my own blog. Everything that appears in Om Times is on my blog. And before Om Times, which I've been writing for 10 years, articles all related to, conscious living and spiritual awakening and such, was Examiner. So I was the National Spiritual Living Examiner for examiner.com. And that, ended up going out of business. I'm a transformational visionary who's very dedicated to empowering others. So my work is always about empowerment for you. I have 4 young adults as children, and I did lose my husband in 2018, which put my own world a little bit on hold as I took care of him. And of course, you can find me on social media at Veronica Lee TV. So Rise. The 12 key elements, and I'll just go through the whole list here, and we will focus today on number 3, renew your commitment. But what I used was the acronym RISE, with 3 R's, 3 I's, 3 S's, 3 E's. So it's rise, right? Because our spiritual awakening, this process is not an overnight thing. This is a process. And oftentimes I see it literally, as a spiral. It's like, if you think of our seasons, we don't have one summer and that's it. We have summer, and then we have fall, and then we have winter, and then we have spring, where everything, comes out anew. Then we go through the cycle again. And as we cycle around, we're really spiraling another layer of who we are, whether it's releasing things that don't match who we are or gaining new things. So this process isn't a, here, do these things and you're going to get so-called there, wherever there is, right? There is not there, it's here. It's coming back into who you have come here to be. And that's really what I'm, very adamant about. It's like, this is who we are. So the first key element is recognize your true self. I spoke about, that you are inherently worthy, and that you probably came in for something greater than just being worthy, right? And that would be remembering your purpose, which I covered in number 2. And oftentimes, those are going to be indicators from the time we're really little. But one of our purposes is literally to not just be who we've come here to be, but to align with and be in that element of joy, that vibration of joy. And today we're going to talk about renew your commitment, which is, it's a constant. It's not like, oh, I'm going to renew it. It's like every year, come January 1st, we make, resolutions, and sometimes we keep them and sometimes we don't. But the key for when we're doing soul work is just continuing to renew our commitment to ourselves and to stay on our path. Element number 4 is instigate change, which we'll talk about next month. Illuminate your intentions is the next. Then implement your intuition. I'm all about having our intuitive senses absolutely integrated. Separate from unsupportive patterns, which isn't always easy. So that'll be an interesting month. Hope you're all available in July. Seek support and surround yourself. And then, of course, showing up and stepping out. So it's not just internal work. This is like, how do we show up in life with this being, this way of being who we are here to be? And then embody and empower. So whether that's empowering yourself or others, evolve your consciousness, and of course, enjoy life and being you. So before I get started, I'm going to go through each. This is basically the one slide. I'm not going to really do any more slides. This is it. But before I get started, I just want to sort of take a little poll, and maybe you just raise your hand. What is, how many of you feel like you're fairly committed or fairly clear about who you've come here to be and kind of what your purpose is, and now you're ready to make a commitment to that? Are you feeling that, or are you still feeling like maybe I'm not so sure? So it looks like Ashley's feeling ready to make a commitment. Yes, Michelle. Yay. Awesome. Okay. So yeah. And again, this is cyclical. So we might find that we have a sense of who we are, that we start to feel more strong and solid about who we have come here to be on this planet journey and what our purpose is. Ish, right? And I always want to say ish, because sometimes people will get really caught up in this idea of purpose being, very particular. And instead, it's like, if our purpose is us being true to who we are, then whatever we do, it just, resonates from us. It radiates from us. It resonates with who we are and our life purpose. And we live more in this energy flow rather than in, analytical, yes, no, or this isn't my purpose, right? So those are the places that we will probably come back to over and over and over as we continue our awakening. And in the meantime, the focus we're going to make today is going to be about renewing that commitment. So what does that mean? It means, in essence, to say yes to who you are, who you have come here to be. So one of the things that gets a little tricky is sometimes we identify ourselves based on a lot of false narratives, a lot of stories that we grew up with, a lot of projections from our family, right? I have a family member who, everybody would be like, oh, she's just sensitive, or, oh, she's really kind of dreamy. Oh, but she's going to be the family psychic, whatever. And so there was a lot of pressure. First of all, it felt really hard. She's a Pisces. She's very heart-centered and emotional. And so any kind of judgments like that can feel really hard for a child. And then on top of it, to be told, she's going to become this family psychic, it almost was like everybody decided her path for her, right? So when I say yes to who you are, it's really about stepping back and discovering that, right? Discovering, who am I and what am I? And sometimes that means kind of peeling away who you're not, right? And there are plenty of ways to start to, dig this up. A lot of times, when we think about young people, they often think about, who do I want to be? And they think about that as, what do I want to do, right? So it's related to a career. It's related to a direction of doing something that then defines who they are. And, most of us probably started that way. And then we might have tripped up over life and said, wait a minute, I'm not necessarily loving what I'm doing. And what's all this about anyway, right? And so coming to this place of saying yes to who you are is also about holding space for anything that feels tender or imperfect, or what you might consider our shadows, right? And so it's not about just, when we think about the word yes, we often think of it as, oh, being positive. It's really affirming that which is. And that which is might be having a breakdown today, right? And so it's not about snapping out of it. It's, oh, I'm having, a breakdown today. I'm feeling super sensitive. It's raining, it's gloomy out there, and it made me just feel a little down. And suddenly I'm having these memories of something that, were uncomfortable. So those are processes. And so it's saying yes to who you are at any given moment, right? Anything that's going on. But more importantly, it's coming back to that soul self, saying yes to who you are as a soul. And what I want to say to that is that if you've been attracted to coming into this class, if you're interested in, anything spiritual, most likely you're a pretty awake soul, or highly, whether it's an old soul or an ancient soul, whatever you want to call it, who's been there, done that in other realms. And you've come to the planet to help be part of this global awakening process that we're moving through. And in doing so, it's a matter of sort of recommitting and recollecting yourself, your soul self, so that it makes it easier to do the work, right? Doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be easy, but it makes it easier. So any questions about that first part? And I'm going to go ahead, and I'm trying to figure out how to make myself see everybody, as well as you can raise your hand literally, or you can just raise it with the thing, or just unmute yourself if you have any questions so far. Go ahead, Michelle.
I think going back to the, like if we say, say yes to who you are, but like I always get so wrapped around the axle with that, right? Like, who am I? Like, I just feel like there has to be this, I don't know, this definitive, what am I here to do? Or who am I? Or is this the, so I don't know. So I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out what the question is there. I guess the question is, I don't even know what the question is.
No, I hear you though. I hear you. So I'll go ahead and address that. I actually wrote a poem I just posted on Facebook called, a lot of times I'm in a writing group, and the writing group will mention a prompt being, here's what I want you to know. And so my prompt was, I want you to know, there's no thing I want you to know. And then just this discovery that I am no thing. Right. And so it's really, as soon as we start going down the spiritual path, the human mind in general is like, whoa, we're going into some pretty weird stuff. So I want to be able to navigate with as much mind as possible. I want to be able to understand structure. I want to be able to understand what I'm getting into. But the more we come into that soul self, the less structured we discover we are. It's almost like, oh my gosh, we are that I am. We are one, right? And then it becomes very, morphing with the all that is. And then it's like, well, that just kind of threw me off, right? Because what am I supposed to do with all this, right? So part of it is having this intention, and part of it is to let go of grasping or thinking you're going to get to any particular place. So when I say yes to who you are, if who you are right now is totally confused about who am I, that's saying yes to that. Because if you're fighting that, if you're saying, but I don't know who I am yet, and therefore I can't do anything about it, then you're basically saying no to this process. You're saying no to exactly as you are and where you are right now. So the first thing is saying yes to whatever you are showing up to be. The other piece, now I'll go into a deeper piece. Let me understand this, hold on. So I think that having other people see you is helpful. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, or that you're going to all of a sudden have this aha. But what I have found is that once I decided, okay, I'm ready to step into me, whatever that means, I know there's something more. There was this longing. I wanted something different. My life was in chaos. Then it sort of opened the floodgates for now seeing myself more clearly. But I didn't see it on my own. I saw it through those who can see me. It's like when, it's that, when you are ready, the teacher will appear. It's like when you're ready to see who you are, then you will start to bring in more and more people who will affirm that for you. But sometimes it can be uncomfortable because it's like, oh, it just feels like I'm so raw, or it'll make us afraid that now we have to be somehow responsible in a different kind of way, right? And of course, when I'm talking about renewing your commitment, I am now moving from this idyllic picture of, oh, I'm this light being, to, okay, so what you going to do with it? Let's make a commitment to stay stay conscious about that light, to stay conscious about who you are. So is that making a little bit more sense? Because it's this muddledness, right? Our mind kind of wants to go in and package it and say, this is what it looks like. And here's her path. This is what Michelle is. Here's her gifts. Da, 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 da. Here's a nice little list, and I'm going to check mark them. And then here's my path. And this, and whatever I do is now going to be perfect and easy because I picked this, because it's my sole purpose. And I, for one, will never tell you it'll be easy. And if anybody wants it to be easy, then you've found the wrong teacher. Not to say that this is about being hard. I have a whole video about effortlessness and ease and grace, but we have come back to the planet to do some really big work, right? If you imagine this dense field that we've come into, and we're all these lights that have come in at this time of a great awakening, then our job is to make that light shine as bright as it can. And that in and of itself, just in our own little world, can be tricky, because then we have bills to pay, we have kids to take care of, we have doubts in our mind, we have all this stuff going on. But the intention is to say, I'm still committed. Even if, it's like if you're running a marathon, you may not be able to run it the whole time. Maybe you're like, I'm going to finish the marathon, but I'm going to sit over here and have a picnic for a little bit, right? My kids did this Spartan race years ago, and those Spartan races are intense. And I remember seeing, and my kids are super fit, like really fit, crazy fit. And so I watched. Obviously I wasn't going to do it. And the people who were doing it were of all sizes and shapes. And I remember, seeing this group of women who were probably, maybe, 40 pounds overweight. And they were sitting there, all like sweaty. They had done part of it. And then they were just sitting there taking a break and having a little picnic together. But their intention was they were going to finish it together, even if it meant taking all those breaks. Right. So for some people, who are so-called spiritually fit, you're going to look at them and be intimidated and think, oh, look they make it look so easy. But that doesn't mean that you're not part of it, that you haven't signed up, that you don't have, something there that wants to be accomplished and moved through you. So in order to help find that, say yes to who you are, you want to cultivate a soul connecting practice of some kind. For many people, that's meditation. I'm not a huge meditator, except for, oddly enough, I do once a week now. I've joined this little online meditation, and it's like, oh my gosh, 30 minutes went by so fast. I don't want to leave this. That's not like me. And every time I'd have any kind of issue in my life, I was raising my 4 kids, life was chaotic, and I'd call my mom and she'd be like, oh, you should meditate. And I'm like, and it would just make me crazy. So I don't care if it's meditation. I don't care what your soul connecting practice is. It's find something. For me, it was literally connecting with family. For me, it was mothering. For me, it was living the life I wanted to live, which was to be a mom. That was my soul connecting practice. And so being with the kids, being out in nature is another huge one for me. And so if it's just literally sitting on the front porch and just taking in, I live in a beautiful area, yes, taking in the beauty, so be it. Or if it's ritual, my mom was all about ritual. She did love meditation, but she did ritual for, all the, season changes and such. But more importantly, it's finding what resonates for you, and to not necessarily think, oh, I have to do it a particular way. And it has to, unless you're that type of person. My mom was that type of person. She had this very firm belief that ritual had to have certain elements. It had to be a certain way, and it had to look a certain, because she had studied through, medicine women and such. But more importantly is that she wanted to pay homage and be, reverent with what she was doing. For me, it was like, I want ritual, but I don't want to feel boxed in. So again, find what works for you. This is your spiritual journey. This is your path. So by connecting to your soul, or some kind of practice that gets you in touch with that on a regular basis, again, it makes it easier to say yes to who you are, to discover who you are, to connect in and renew those commitments. So for me also, it's journaling, a lot of writing. My journaling used to be much more, like, oh, my life is falling apart and I need to just like, throw up my words and my anger and my rage and my confusion into a journal. And, but for the past, couple of years, it's really been more poetry, and that's helping me really express and tap into these kind of like questions, or almost like spiritual questions and life questions that find their way on these meandering paths through words. And maybe I come up with an answer, but likely not. I've just come to another rest point, right? So whatever that means for you. All right, so cultivating a soul connecting practice. Any questions around that? You can raise your hand. If you're on the phone and you want to raise your hand, it would be *9. And if you want to unmute yourself, it's *6. Otherwise, I can continue. Okay. So this next part, become curious and ask for signs and guidance from higher realms. So again, when we think about any kind of excavation or any kind of path or any kind of, I'm just gonna grab my, my resources here for you. What we want to do is we want to really come into a place of curiosity. It's like, yes, when we started school, as little children, we were curious. Obviously, we had to be in school. We had to, go to kindergarten and this and that, but we wanted to be there. There was a curiosity. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the public school systems kind of squelch curiosity because they want to give you fed answers. And there's something really comfortable about fed answers, right? It's like, oh, I got my A+ and I feel good about myself, or, whatever the situation is. And yet, when we think we know, or we think we have the answer in real life, a lot of times it's not, or especially anything to do with spirituality, it's not quite so simple. It's much more fluid, it's much more unpredictable, and it doesn't always, get you from A to B to C. It might be A to Z to, I don't know what, even if this letter even exists, and where am I now? And let's start at A again, right? And so by becoming curious, there's a quest for exploration, not knowing, but exploration, wondering about what might be here, what might show up, what might be revealed to me, right? So those are the questions of that curious seeker, looking for possibilities, not necessarily answers, but more or less what might be there. When I say ask for signs or guidance from higher realms, sometimes if we go into curiosity with an analytical mind, we are again start looking for that grasping knowing and hard facts. And it can be, it can feel limiting, or somehow we can feel like, well, what if I get it wrong, right? And it might intimidate us for the quest, because it's like, well, what if I do it wrong? What if I get it wrong? Well, what if I don't know? What if there is no answer, right? And the reality is that, as these spiritual human beings of pure light, pure love, this amazing, multifaceted universe that we are within ourselves, we won't ever, thankfully, have the it answer, have the itness of a finality, right? Of now I know, and it might be now I know this in relation to other things, but we're always evolving, always learning something new. So with curiosity, it's that, again, it's that saying yes, it's that opening up to what might be there. Now, again, I'll go back to this asking for signs and guidance, because sometimes we can get confused, as you were mentioning, Michelle, we can get confused about and I want to say this kind of carefully because it, again, sometimes I feel like I speak in paradoxes because it is so open, but we can get confused thinking there's going to be a so-called right answer. But when we ask for signs and guidance from these other realms, there's almost as if a relationship we create that allows us to surrender a little bit, to surrender to the holding on, to surrender to the having to know, to the thing that believes that somehow we're doing it all ourselves. And so again, it can be a little tricky because some people are like, I don't want to surrender to anything, or I don't trust in any higher self, or higher realm or higher power, whatever you want to call it. But by cultivating that soul connecting practice with your soul, it's going to lead you, because you are a multifaceted being that's highly awake, into these connections with these other beings. Let's say it might be an angel, it might be your ancestors, it might be elements, it might be, so don't feel limited to what it might show up as, because if you're curious, you might discover that you are having a reoccurring dream and, a lion keeps showing up, right? And you're like, what is this? What is this? And you can start to ask, who is this lion? One of the places that I do my best, I could do it in meditation, but again, with meditation, like trying to empty my mind rather than evaluate or ask and answer questions, is through a writing practice in which I will, maybe come into a grounded place of meditative awareness. And then I start asking questions and then just allowing whatever information to come through. So it could be that if you have a recurring dream about some kind of being, that you start to ask, who are you, lion? And do you have any messages for me? And then just see what comes. The other thing, you could literally buy a deck of angel cards or ascended master cards, or something that kind of represents these higher realms of consciousness. And so when I say ask for a sign, if there's something going on, it's like, I'm needing direction today. I'm kind of curious. I'm wondering what's going on here. And you pull a card. A lot of those cards have instructions or information directly on them. And then you can let that be your meditation for the day. But the key is that you are setting the intention to be in communication with these higher realms, to be in communication with your soul, to say, I'm interested and willing to listen and to step toward a direction that makes this relationship more easy for me, as well as one that I could start to learn to trust, right? Because that can be tricky for some people, is trusting in these higher realms. So I'll pause here. Becoming curious and asking for signs or guidance from higher realms. Any questions, comments? Anything at all coming up for you? One of the things I offer, if you sign up for my mailing list and it's on there, and maybe you already have it, is I do a couple of guided meditations that lead you to your Akashic record. So in my mailing list, there's, you sign up and then you get the little link that's a free gift to get, it's a 25-minute of me guiding you, a guided visualization to your own Akashic records, tapping into this, all that is energy, this source consciousness. As well, in the resources that I put up in the chat, there's a guided meditation. And I'm not sure, I'm thinking I'm the one that did it. My mom and I, in 2017, this is when my husband got diagnosed. So it only goes through like mid-May, when just about the time he was diagnosed with, he got ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And so the meditations stopped, but they're all on my website under meditations. So anyway, they are free to listen to. And if you scroll down to where it says May, I think it's May, there's a connecting with your angel meditation that is also free. So that's in the resources. So it opens up, but some of these were led by my mom. Some of the meditations were led by my mom and sent by me, and I don't remember who did that one. Okay, so now we'll go on to make yourself and your soul work a priority. Now, I do have a question here for you. How many of you feel like you can't get away from your work being a priority, that your soul work being a priority? It's almost like, I don't know how to not make my soul work a priority. Just curious if there's anybody that has that feeling. Yeah, sometimes there are people who will definitely feel like it would be so nice to be normal and not feel like I have to always do this soul work, or that I'm not always connected to this element of being so conscious. And it's kind of like a little cosmic joke, right? It's like, can I just be normal? And that was like, when I talk about having to visualize myself getting well as a kid, it's a cool gift. It's like, yeah, I got to visualize myself getting well. But I jokingly have spoken about this many times. And I'm like, can I just have like chicken soup like all the other kids? Can I just be normal for a change? And the answer was no, you don't get, my mom didn't know how to cook, so whatever. So, yeah. So Ashley, are you raising your hand also to ask anything? Because I would love to answer any questions if you have any.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah. Pretty typical for many of us. Okay. So for those of you who are, not trying to get away from making your soul work a priority because it keeps showing up in your lap, I'm encouraging you to say, okay, it's time for me to now make my soul work and myself a priority. They are hand in hand. When I wanted to so-called be normal and not, have to have, this whole spiritual thing over me, I went off, from, in high school and such, I was totally into like spirituality, because it was still kind of cool for me. And I read the book Illusions. My mom's like, you got to read Jonathan Livingston Seagull first. Okay. Then Illusions. And then it was like, whoa, dude, and then when I went out into the world, I ended up going to UC Davis, and it's like, I just want to be normal. I just want to be like a college student and be so normal and have kids. And then there was crisis in my life, which threw me back into being this being that I've come here to be and to do the work that I'm doing. And so oftentimes, if you don't make yourself or your soul work a priority, you will get thrown into a situation that makes you make yourself and your soul work a priority. Now, we see this clearly when it comes to making yourself a priority for many people. We see this with health, right? We'll see that oftentimes it'll be like, the sacrificial mom who doesn't put herself, first, and then suddenly she's just like, has, what is it like? Chronic fatigue, right? Because it's like, I couldn't put myself first, or I couldn't take my care of myself and do what I need to do for me. And now I'm just so wiped out, or, whatever the situation is that leads us to having some dis-ease in our life, right? But the soul work is sort of like back burner-ish. We kind of want to believe it is. But when you come into this incarnation as this light that says, I'm here to make this change, yourself and your soul work are pretty much inseparable. And so when you have that place of like, I want to do my soul work, whatever that is, I'm committing myself. What you're going to learn is you have to also take care of your body and your boundaries, right? And again, we'll talk about that later about, separating from unsupportive systems. But the first thing is to start including and taking care of what you have. So again, another resource I have shared with you is a video I made again many years ago. And it's about taking care of your spiritual human body, just some pretty basic things. But it's like we often, especially I find as women who are very other oriented, can forget to put ourselves even on the train. It's like, oh, totally forgot about that. Right. So inherently you are a giver. Most of us are, right? We are empaths, we are givers. We, came in with big hearts and we want to be participatory, but we keep forgetting that, that this being counts. And so it could be little things. It could be, one thing years ago, I used to sell, 28 plus years ago, my daughter's 28 now, Mary Kay. And, they talked about, what was it? Faith, family, career or something. Anyway, whatever the order was, but whatever. Anyway, there was this idea that you're putting on your schedule things that you have to do. And one thing was to color code them so that you got to see how much were related to how you take care of yourself. And I still have that in my calendar. It's like, okay, I have my spiritual work. This is still work, but I have that. That's not for me. This is not for me. When I do this work, I'm taking care of myself because I'm aligning with my soul work, but it's not for me in terms of self-care. So I have to recognize that I can't pretend that, just like mothering, as much as this is mothering was my world. That's what I wanted. It filled me with so much joy. And yet I still had to take care of me. It didn't count to say, hey, but I'm doing what I love to do, but I'm, dragging my, butt and I'm exhausted. Right. So, so really recognizing where you are doing those little things for yourself. And at first they may feel like have tos. They may feel like, oh, I don't really want to, go for a walk, or I don't really want to, whatever it is. And you want to start to recognize whatever resistance is there. What is that resistance that's like, is it because society's telling you, or is it because there's something in you that just doesn't feel like you've given yourself permission to put yourself, and make yourself a priority? So I'm assuming this might have triggered something for people. Any questions about this part, making yourself and your soul work a priority? I'm going to pause here while I get a drink. Okay, so with me, I'm all about, let me find the right words. Remember at the beginning, I talked about, my work is really to empower others, that it's really hard to encourage this love and loving self-care without the receiver often feeling guilty or shameful, right? And so just recognize that's never my intention. So one thing that years ago, when I first started working in the Akashic Records, 17 years ago, I was like, okay, I would start to ask the records like every morning, what should I do? Or what should I feel? Or what should. And so the very first thing that I was informed in the records was should is simply could, which is neutral, with shame attached to it. So if we look at it more neutrally with could, what could I do to make myself a priority today or for this moment? It doesn't have to be today. What could I do? Then it helps unhook the shame, because as soon as there's some shame in there, then we feel worse. And then it's like a weight. And then it's like, I don't want to do this. Or we feel, rebellious, that teen rebellion piece comes up or whatever it is. And so shame can be very triggering in many ways. And so anything I'm offering is not out of shame and should, it's really as this is the picture of moving you more in alignment with most clarity. It's not about forming or becoming in a way that is just like, we don't want that. We want to move into a place with that openness of heart, that allowance of love, that recognition that I need to take care of this and that I'm doing my best, And that's the most I can do is my best, even if my best is like a pinky of my whole ability, right? That's good enough. I remember when my oldest was 2, this is really pathetic, as I wanted nothing more than to be a mother. And I knew I was going to be a much better mother than my mother, because my mother was a 16-year-old mother. And she even knew she screwed up a lot. And so I'm like, oh, I'm going to do it right. I'm actually going to be, my mom was married. She was married for a full year before I was born. But not in my family. My whole family dynamics, women weren't getting married. They were all teenage moms. So I'm like, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to, wait until I get married. I'm going to be a real grown up when I have kids. I'm going to go to college. Like, nobody else really did it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway. And so I had my daughter at age 27. And then when she was like 2.5 or so, we were going to the UC Davis Human Development Department, and they have students who are learning how to be teachers and, work with children and such, child development. And so they recommended that she go to therapy. And I'm like, I've already screwed her up. She's only 2, And so I just felt so horrible. I'm thinking, okay, here I'm taking this little 2-year-old to therapy because I'm obviously doing something wrong. And so the therapist was the sweetest thing, but she basically said, there's a book called Good Enough Parenting. Now, I never read the book, but the name itself just softened me, because it was like, I was so like determined to do it so right and so different. And, and all of that there was a rigidity there, right? And there was a fear there. And so the term good enough parenting just softened and thought, that's all I can do is good enough. And that's what I'm inviting for you, is to recognize that this good enough of living, right? Good enough. And then the last one is stay committed to your soul path. So again, this can feel like that balloon that's on the back of the dog's, collar, and you're like, what is that? And, whatever, and you can't get away from it. And you're constantly like, your soul work is just like in your face all the time, or right there hanging on to the back of your collar, and you can't get away, and you can't see it quite, you can't pin it down. But that's often because it's like you, before you incarnated, and I did talk about this last time, you made a commitment, you made certain soul agreements before you were born. So when you've incarnated and then you tried to like go live a normal life and forget all this stuff that I, committed to pre-incarnation, it's going to come back and get you and say, oh, wait a minute, hold on, we made a commitment here. And that commitment was not just likely to help with this global awakening, but in order to do that, it's to really transform self, right? And this is the part that can be the heavy duty stuff that may not feel so good. And it's not about being the best version of you and all of that kind of, stuff that a lot of times I get a little bit, I just, that whole picture of like trying to be better than who I was before, that bothers me, because then somehow it assumes that I'm not good enough, right? What I see is awaken to the perfection of you, to really align with and remember you are already perfect, that who you are is perfect, right? And that there's this inherent perfection of your beingness, period. Right? There's an absolute worthiness of your being, period. There's no need to justify. There's no need to become anything other than you are, which again feels paradoxical when I'm saying stay committed. So staying committed often means staying conscious, just paying attention, going, oh, that's right. I am doing the best I can. I am perfect. And I'm not feeling so much joy and alignment today. So how do I open my heart to more of that? Right? It's that leaning in. It's not about getting it right. And so the staying committed to your soul path often isn't even going to be conscious. It's going to be, it just kind of grabs you and says, this is what we've agreed to do. And so it's almost easier to just turn around and like, okay, and take it on and walk with it a little bit more willingly. What it looks like doesn't matter. And that can feel really uncomfortable because I have seen, I work with people all over the world. And one of my clients, well, I have a lot like this, but she's in the Netherlands. And what I see is that she's like from this other dimension. She's highly awake. And she keeps wanting to know, like, what is her work here? And I'm like, well, interestingly, it's like, it's just allowing for this frequency to come through you. And unfortunately, it may not look like a gig that she can get paid for. It might turn into one, but right now she's raising her daughters. She's busy, whatever, right? And so it can be a little bit tricky, but it's that awareness of having this connection to these other realms and staying open to that and letting it resonate through her being, let it vibrate, let it become who she is. That uplifts the planet by just being herself. Right. And so for others, it might be they came in, these are agreements you've made pre-incarnation most of the time. For others, it might be, for me, it was, okay, through my mothering, that will be my ministry, is really being present for my children, being the best parent I can be, even if my mind is telling me, shame or whatever story it might tell me, but to just do that with as much consciousness as possible. And then once my kids moved out, then there's other pieces that have unfolded, like, okay, what does my soul path look like today, right? What is that, moving toward for me? So it's oftentimes not as cut and dry as we would like. It would be like, just show me the signposts and help me get to there. But it's usually going to be so much a part of your feeling body in some ways. It's like, I feel like there's something more I'm needing, that it's going to kind of continue showing up, whether it's books that you happen to read or that drop in your lap, or a story that somebody tells, or a connection that you make. It's like, here's your soul path reminding you, hey, here it is, here you are. Are you walking today? And you're like, okay, sure, I'll take a couple of steps in that direction, right? So those are the pictures. So we're almost to the end of our time. Any questions around that particular element of, or part of this element, the stay committed, or anything at all that I covered or that you have questions about?
Yeah, I just want to make an observation, if I may.
Yes.
Firstly, I'm sorry I was late.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.
But it seems that what you're focusing on is that this is a process and we don't have to know the answers. So we just have to take care. I mean, there's certain rules of the road. You take care of yourself. You look at the long run and you make sure that you're going to be, whole when you get there, and that the little bits of information just sort of come to us. Am I correct in that?
Essentially, yes. It's like, it's becoming more conscious that you are more than just what you think you are. And to say,
At this moment, yeah.
Yes, it's like, I am so willing to step into the rest of me. I'm so willing to own my powerful soul, right? That's
like I'm in process, right? I am in process. I'm going to be in process for the duration.
Exactly.
Okay.
Totally.
And then I totally forgot the second part of my question. So give me a moment and maybe someone else could go.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other observations or questions or anything coming up for you?
Yeah. Oh, the other thing is that what you said about the signs and guidance from higher realms. And then you referenced different paths and different platforms, different modalities. And I'm thinking that actually that is becoming my experience, that you just don't pick any, it's not like one place has, they're all little channels. They're all little channels, and then they reference each other, which kind of blows my mind, because if they don't know about each other, how can they reference each other? But they do. Exactly. That's where I am right now. Absolutely.
And my mom, she ended up becoming, she was like, what she would jokingly say is like a recovering Catholic. That was her upbringing. And she was like, and then she ended up, of all things, she went on a vision quest, hoping to find something outside herself, I think, and the answer. And what she came to on her vision quest, out in the desert on a blanket for however many days, was to become an ordained minister. And she's like, what? Me, of all people. And the ministry that she ended up getting connected in with was their picture was that all paths lead to the one, right? That all paths lead to that one. And that's the picture of this eclectic sort of spirituality. It's not about, oh, I'm picking and choosing because I don't like this now. But so what? What if that is who we are? But it's really recognizing the oneness of all of it. And it's like, wow.
Well, if that's the case, it takes a lot of pressure off, because we don't have to like, oh, have I covered this? Have I done this? What about this? Try this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, just if you just be, and then whatever path it is, or whatever, wherever you are is going to take you there.
Exactly.
That's pretty great.
Absolutely.
It's like a no-lose situation.
Yeah, yes,
Exactly.
Totally. So phone number 773 area code. I think if you push *6, you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. I didn't remember how to do it.
Yep.
So I guess my question is more so for you. What do you do when you're like physically tired?
Yeah. So I'm going to say a couple things. I'm going to speak back to you. So part of the reason that you're tired is that, you're overwhelmed. You carry a lot of people's stuff. It's mostly an emotional tired than a physical, but it's hitting you physically. But the issue is that when we come in, what I'm seeing for you is that you're an empath, and when you're an empath, you're just like totally open, right? You feel everybody's stuff. And then it's just like, I can't handle all this, right? And so then it becomes like too much. And of course, we live in a world that is completely bombarded with not just all of these emotions, but all of these things to do. So one thing would be to start to recognize, how do I protect my energy field, right? How do I protect me from being so open where I can feel and take on everybody? And it's just like, okay, so you can start to imagine like a shield around yourself. And so before you start each day, you can imagine just this beautiful, nourishing shield of whatever color, light, sound, whatever it works for you, that says, this is holding me. This is, holding me. The other thing I've done is I've recognized that my capacity for doing is pretty low, not because, oh, there's something wrong with me. It's because when you have such a high frequency energy wise, a lot of times what happens is you're running a lot of energy. And so then the human stuff is like, well, this is about all I could do on my everyday stuff, right? So what I've learned to do is really start to just pick and choose and take so much off my plate, and that is a practice. That in itself is a practice to start reducing. And that's why I was saying, we'll come back to that specifically when we get to number 7, which is, letting go of unsupportive systems. So does that answer your question to some degree?
Yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if you want to mute yourself, you can, or if there's no noise in the background, you don't have to, but again, it would be *6. And so Maricela, you have a question.
Yes. And I waited to the last part because now I have a better idea what you're offering, my dear. I think for me, what I'm looking for, lately I've been feeling that there is more to feel in what I'm here to do, to offer. And there are times where I feel I'm not doing enough. I'm not giving myself enough. And it's beautiful to have good intentions and positive feelings and positive thoughts, but it's not enough. So I don't know where I'm coming from, but I am very, when you talk about having a spiritual connection for the self, I know that I am totally lacking that. I am too much in my head, organizing the trips and the circles. It's like giving, and I feel very energetically defeated. Mm-hmm. So I think that might be part of, I'm feeling that I have to give more and I have to do more. And at the end, it's irrelevant. So I really, for me, want to arrive to that place of just knowing that in every moment, I am doing what I'm here to do. So talking about the purpose, I feel that maybe there is a general purpose for everyone, which is just to simply evolve in all the different aspects of the self. But at the same time, there is a particular purpose that everybody has a uniqueness. So sometimes I even question if I am on the path of really fulfilling my purpose, or it's just momentarily and it's not real. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions back and forth.
Yeah, so I'll answer you, because what I want to go back to is my client from the Netherlands. Maricela, you're very much the same way, that if anything, you do too much. And the issue is that not enoughness is trying to carry the whole load of the whole planet in its huge transformation, right? And to recognize that you are a singular light, and the most effective way to shine is to keep your light lit, which can happen when you preserve it, but then to light the candle for others, right? Because then this is why I'm doing this, right? Because if I can see and see and see and see, it's like, Miss Marianne, like I see, Michelle, I see Shirley, whatever her name was on Romper Room. That's what my job is to see people so that they can remember who they are, so that they can become that they have come here to do. Now, what I see for you is that you are doing a lot, but that not enoughness is really residual old stories that are trying to unravel. The old stories of really, is there anything is not enough? Is there anything is not enough? That's an untruth right there. There's no such thing as not enough, right? That's a belief system. It's a game we've played. It's a unfortunate thing that we've hooked into, but we're unraveling that. And so that's what we're going to feel. That's what we're going to experience as it arises, as we're letting it go. It'll be like, can I breathe? It's coming out of that womb and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to breathe this air stuff, right? Because I've been getting all my oxygen through my belly button from my mother. But that's the one picture. And then the other is that, I'm also seeing that you've been moving through, and this, just, you can feel it as I'm talking, you're moving through a huge transformation for yourself. And when you're in that phase, you kind of can't do anything. You're kind of like laid out. And so that was, for me, what I recognized with losing Eric is that I couldn't do squat, and so it's like I had to lay low. I had to do nothing. And then right when I was thinking I was ready to start emerging, then the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh, no, you're not. And so it's like, okay. And so we're moving through these huge transformations. That is the work too. That's part of the work too. And so it's allowing for that. And like you said, it's coming back to this like, how do I make myself a priority?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely. So we've come to a little bit over time, just a few minutes. And I'll share with you that next month, we will be talking about instigating change. And so what does that look like? And how do we start to do that? Because again, sometimes maybe that change isn't by doing more, that change is doing less, right? Maybe that change is not being outward focused on saving the world, but coming in and saying, the world is perfect as it is. Who knows what that might be for you? And so it's that those questions. And so, of course, my picture is that I hold for each of you that your soul knows. And it's just a matter of just kind of reminding you to continue that conversation and that exploration and that questioning and that curiosity with your relationship with your soul, so that it becomes stronger, so that whatever you're doing isn't just right and in alignment because I should, but it's like, there's so much grace here because now I can just kick back and know I'm doing my work just by being in joy, right? Whatever that looks like. So that is,
Veronica, it just, giving birth to oneself is already a huge amount of work. It's not like we
Absolutely.
focus on other things. I'm beginning to
Absolutely.
understand.
Totally. And that is where we are. So if anybody wants to stay around, I can answer questions. I do want to honor your time. So the next one is Monday, the 25th, same Zoom link, all that's the same. When this video is done with the recording, I'll put it up on my website. The resources are already in the chat. So if you click on any of them, they will open a new screen in your computer. And so it'll take you to articles. If there's any articles that you want to learn about, I've got hundreds of articles. You can literally just put it in the search bar what you're looking for, and you'll probably find it. So if you're curious, but these resources will also be on my website under the classes page, and so you can find them. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and officially close. Thank you for joining me tonight. And then again, if anybody has additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop, even though it may be lovely to have the recording. I'm also going to stop the recording.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So any questions that are remaining, feel free to stay. Otherwise, yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, it was great having you all. A pleasure.
Thank you, my dear.
Absolutely.